Hi, my name is Hugh McKenna from Asgard Athletics. This week we're going to be going over the single leg deadlift. You can perform this exercise with a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a hex bar if it has no back, a barbell. I personally prefer doing it with a kettlebell, but you can do it with whatever you have available. I really like this exercise because it develops the proper hip hinge mechanics and gets your glute activated, especially when you're on one leg, which most sports, when you're driving off one leg or the other. You're usually not in this bilateral stance right here and driving forward. You're in an athletic stance, whether you're running, you're punching, you're kicking, you're usually on one leg and not two. So I really like this exercise for developing the balance to stay on one leg, also to develop the proper hinging mechanics to get that glute firing the way it should be. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your weight. If I'm using my left glute to do the exercise, I'm going to put the weight in my right hand. I'm going to line up my knee up with my shoulder. My foot is facing forward. My knee is like over my first three toes. If you're having balance issues, you can slide this foot back and keep it on the ground until it's about here, and then you can start lifting it up. But if you have good balance already, you can just lift that off the ground right away. So my hips are going to go backwards. My chest is going to come forwards here. I'm going to get into this hinged position. I'm going to come down to my chest is like 45 degrees off the floor. I don't want to come all the way back here where my chest is completely parallel. I want to stay in a more athletic stance, so I'm going to come to about here. Then I'm going to squeeze the glute, and I'm going to drive my hips into extension, and I'm going to come back to standing. The weight, when I go into my hip hinge, is going to go right outside my big toe here. So I start with it like I'm holding a briefcase. I start sliding this foot backwards. All of my weight is in this leg. Beware of shifting too much to the side. Try and keep your hips and knees and foot in line. You're going to lift that leg up. You're going to come into your hip hinge right here. Your knee is staying up in the same direction as your toes. You're going to squeeze the glute. You're going to drive to a standing position and come up. A common mistake people make when they do this, they let this leg go back and they start opening this hip up and externally rotating here. This is not what we want to do. As we go into a hip hinge, we want to internally rotate the femur. So if the head of my femur was pointing this way, as I go down, I want it to start pointing inwards. So I'm going to come here, and you see my hips are internally rotating here as I go back. I keep this hip facing forward. I squeeze the glutes, and I come back to standing. So again, you're going to put your foot directly under your shoulder and your hip. You're going to stand up nice and tall, hold it like you're holding a briefcase, slide or lift your foot back, go into the hip hinge, keep the hips facing forward, make sure that the knee is over the first three toes. You come to about a 45-degree angle here, you squeeze the glutes, and you drive forward. Another common mistake people make is when they get into this like low hip hinge position and they want to come up, they start lifting with their upper body first before they drive their hips forward, and then they end up using their lower back to lift most of the weight and do most of the work coming up with their lower back. We want to do most of the work with our glutes as we're coming to hip extension. So when I come here, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to drive like I'm about to run forward. So I want to drive my hips forward to come into extension, and that way I'm using my glutes, and the last thing I do is start straightening up my upper body. So I'm here. I have it in my opposite hand. This either slides back, right? I don't open up this way, or I lift it immediately and go into the hip hinge. The weight is like right over your big toe, right outside it. You're going to squeeze the glute once your chest is about 45-degree angles, and you're going to come to a standing position. Go back. Here. You can alternate, or you can do one side and then the other. So you're here. You hinge backwards, squeeze the glute, come up. You're here. You hinge backwards, and squeeze the glute, and come up. So that's the single leg deadlift. So again, you can perform this with a variety of different tools. Personally, I like the way the kettlebell feels the most, but you might have your own personal preference for it. So again, I'm Hugh McKenna from Asgard Athletics, and that was the single leg deadlift. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and also subscribe to my page so you don't miss the weekly videos coming out. Catch you later.